Welcome back to WDRB Media, the voice of your community, giving you double the information and inspiration. If you're tuning in, hopefully you're tuning in through your TuneIn radio app, iTunes Radio, or you're streaming in live on your computer or laptop at WDRBmedia.com. You're listening to A New Day, and I'm your host, Juicy J, with my co-host.
Mr. Bay.
And today we're talking about unity in the community and stopping the violence. So in that last segment, we kind of talked about conflict resolution and how we feel as if, some school officials and the students need to step up a little bit more and take some accountability when they see things are escalating in a violent manner in the school. But then we also wanted to talk about metal detectors and the fact that do we think that if they're in the school, will some of these school shootings be maybe prohibited or eliminated? What do you think, Mr. Bay?
Well, that being said, during the little investigation that we did find out that actually at Butler High School, I guess they have two gun incidents where earlier in the year where they actually got two guns, two students in the school with guns. So we know that kids are bringing guns to school. I, for myself, I'm not proud of this, but I was a little wild and crazy in my day, and I used to carry guns to school. In fact, I used to have two guns most days, and and so I was being led astray, following the wrong type of path, and that's luckily, fortunate for me, I was never caught with a weapon. I never had to be put in a situation where I had to use the weapon, and I was always taught, if you pull a gun on somebody, you better be prepared to kill them. And, I like to fight, so I was pretty good with my hands. So, I guess I would rather do that than have to kill somebody. But I guess if it came down to it, if my life was on the line, I probably would have, But, as the old people say, you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Right.
And so that being said, growing up in the city where we did actually have metal detectors in schools. I graduated from Detroit Persian High School in class of '96. We never had any type of gun incidents on a school campus. Where I don't even think they've ever had a situation where a gun was found on the campus. And so, and we definitely got checked every day. Before you went in school, you had to go through those guns. You had to go through a metal detector. As far as here in North Carolina, as far as in North Carolina, I'm not sure if I've ever been in a school and seen guns, seen any type of metal detectors. And so, the whole argument about who's going to pay for it or whatever, I mean, what's it worth? What's a life worth? And I feel like if they can find money to fund all these different things that they do in America and in the country, metal detectors should be like a priority list, in my opinion. Based on a history, of all these high school students and shootings and stuff that's happened throughout the years, like it should be a no-brainer. And so that being said, I definitely feel like the North Carolina school systems are going to have to have that conversation, and maybe hopefully sooner than later, so that no other children, could get caught up in a situation where they get, shot in school. Obviously, you can't watch children 24 hours a day. Things can happen off campus all the time, but a school should be a safe place where kids can not have to worry about, ducking and hiding because somebody's on a rampage, and they, decide they want to shoot somebody or kill somebody, whether they protecting themselves or not.
I would agree.
So I think, this case may be one of those cases that, will open and set the precedent for that conversation to be had. I know that there are some people who are looking at this. I feel like it's going to be a political situation, and we can bring all those things up, to the conversation. We just had a vote here on yesterday. Maybe we need to put that on the ballot, and make it happen sooner than later, so that other children don't have to worry about going to school, man, or even parents have to worry about sending their kids to school. And, it's so easy to get a gun, especially in the South, I would say. You got a gun show almost every other week somewhere
That's
here.
true.
And so guns are, kids can get guns very easily, and I don't care, how much you think you watch your kids or whatever. If they feel like they want to get a weapon, they can find one. So, one thing is, talking to your children and, seeing where they are. And if you feel like you got a kid that, could potentially make that type of decision, you really might want to have them think twice, and I would say the metal detector, it would make you think twice, bringing a gun to school, because if you get caught, you're going to go to jail.
This is true.
And rightfully so. So, maybe we need to really be reevaluating a lot of things, even the stuff that we allow our kids to put in their ears, the things that we're watching, and the things that we, you see people sharing fight videos, grown adults sharing fight videos on social media like it's cool or something. Like, I don't even want to see that. So we got to stop that, as parents, and watching our children and monitoring our children, making sure that they not, participating in this.
Right. Oh, I mean, to piggyback off of the metal detectors and to go back to that, and this just came to me, I will say that, a school building or schoolhouse, or some, as your grandmama used to say, is still considered a federal building. It's federally funded. But when you go into all of your other federally funded federal buildings, they have scanners and metal detectors everywhere. So I guess I'm just going to say it. So basically you want to say that the judge's life is more important than a bunch of students' lives. That's how I look at that. So, nobody will probably be willing to say that verbally, but it's definitely in the thought process. So if it's good enough to put in the courthouse, why wouldn't it be good enough to put into a schoolhouse? And so that's the attitude that, when you want to be an advocate for something and an advocate for change, you have to say some of those things that will make a couple of people think twice and to be a little bit uncomfortable. So that would be my biggest thing, is to say, well, we can put it in this courthouse that's federally funded. Why wouldn't it be able to go in the schoolhouse that's federally funded? Because these student lives are just as important as these lawyers and these judges. So that's something that I feel like we really should look at. And then the fact of the matter is that, they have the police officers and the security officers at these schools, but, it's that ratio. I don't know the ratio offhand, but, just with being a parent and being in the school, it's nowhere near enough where they can really watch these students. So, at that point, you're also putting those officers' lives at hand if they're trying to break up something and it's a shootout and an altercation. So, I can agree, and I can remember a lot of things happening growing up in Chicago and going to school in Chicago. But one of the things we knew that when we walked through that door, we was definitely going through that metal detector. And it was, I'll say another thing for me that was a shocker moving from Chicago and actually going to Georgia was that student IDs was mandatory. So you had to be able to have this actual ID around your neck at all times to even be able to walk around, to even get into the school building, and to get into your class. So if you didn't have your ID around your neck, you definitely had to go to the office to pay for another one. And then but before you go to the office, you had to go through the metal detectors. And like you say, that was back in the 80s, early 90s. And so then I just figure here in 2018, with the amount of mass shootings that we've had and their school shootings, then why is it that nothing has been changed to say, hey, we really need to reevaluate some things and let's look at how we can keep our children safe? Because they'll fight you if you choose to homeschool your child and your child don't report for those first 2 weeks. But then when you have a situation like this mom, and I think she has maybe either 3 or 4 additional children. If that was me, I would be a little skeptical to send my child now to a schoolhouse because you didn't keep one of my babies safe. So the same energy that you want to have as to question me as to how come I'm no longer sending them back to a quote unquote safe place, which is a schoolhouse, then hey, let's pose that question as to why you not ensuring me that my children would be safe.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot of definitely. It's going to bring about the conversation for sure, and hopefully some resolution where they will be able to initiate those type of things into the school system, and it's a norm and not something that's rare. I mean, it's sad that you have to do such a thing, but I mean, reality is what it is right now, and you got to do whatever you have to do to maintain the safety of your students and your staff.
Absolutely.
When you're dealing with the public, you know, you mentioned about the judges, you know, being protected, you know. Yeah, absolutely. The students need the same protection when they go to school every day to make sure that they can get, you know, access to a viable education and not have to worry about if they're going to be able to come home because somebody decided they want to come and you know, shoot somebody. And I don't think that young man, I can't speak for him. You know, I'm sure if he had a second chance to go back, I don't think that maybe he would have brought that gun to school. I would like to think that he would have definitely came up with another way to deal with the situation or even ask for help, you know. And
right.
So that's another thing, too, with our young man. You know, we feel like there's no, you know, it's not a lot of fathers in the household or whatever, and you know, it's not a lot of men groups out there talking to these young men to, you know, show them a better way. You know, maybe they've traveled down those same roads where that cost them some time or cost their life or whatever. But being, you know, growing up in the inner city like myself, I remember a couple of years ago, and I went home for a visit on a block that I grew up on, and my aunt's been living on the street for over 40 years. And one day we were just, it was a sunny day in the summer in Detroit, and Detroit's west side, and kids were outside playing football, oh no, basketball, from like a couple houses down, and people were outside on their porch sitting, you know, playing music or whatever. And the next thing you know, a car comes speeding down the street. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened on that particular day, it was like a deja vu because I had the same situation happen in that same neighborhood where I've seen people get killed in broad daylight and houses shot up and all that kind of stuff. So I immediately, you know, told my family to get down or whatever. And next thing you know, gunshots, and it was a man down. It was a young man. I think he was like 24 years young. And come to find out, he was the cousin to somebody that I grew up with. But there was a retaliation situation where two brothers, one of the brothers got beat up in the fight the week prior. And then the brothers came back, shot the kid, shot this guy in broad daylight. They didn't have no mask on. They didn't even have shirts on. I mean, everybody knew them, too, who did it. And the next thing you know, that next night, there was a retaliation. And the family or the people, next thing you know, the other household got shot up. And Alistair didn't get shot up, it got burnt to the ground. And the mother was in the household where she could have lost her life for something that her son did.
Right.
And so people need to, you know, definitely, we as a people, you know, when we see things happening in our community, we need to really step up and say, hey, man, somebody could have came up, some of the guys in the neighborhood could have came up and said, hey, man, you know, we know y'all beefing and stuff like that, but hey, man, let's come up with a better solution. Because back then, when I was growing up in that same neighborhood, if the kids had a situation where they felt like they needed to fight, you know, they would let them fight. You know, it'd be one family over here and the next family over there, and they let them fight and made the best man win. Nobody jumped in, and it was fair. And after that, we dusted it off, and that was it. Nobody went and got no weapons and all that other stuff. It was done. But now, you know, it's a different situation. And, you know, kids, they're not taking, you know, they ain't about to take a L. You know, they trying to plan for keeps. So, you know, there's so many lives being lost.
Well,
you know?
as long as they keep that mindset of trying to play for keeps, at the end of the day, they're taking a massive L anyway. Because in this situation that we're covering and we're talking about, it's 2 L's. So who's really winning? Nobody. And on that note, we're gonna end this segment and we're gonna take a break. You're tuning in to WDRB Media, the voice of your community, giving you double the information and inspiration. Don't go anywhere because we're going to be right back.